What does it take to protect a dream when everything is stacked against you? What does a leader do when the enemy is stronger and wrong move could end everything? Today we step into a moment where strategy wasn't optional, it was survival. A moment where courage met calculation and negotiation became a weapon. This is not just history. This is leadership under fire. And to decode this, we have our leadership catalyst, Commander Girish Konkar.
Thank you. Thank you. Pleasure.
Shivaji, with his capture of the three forts, had rattled the Sultan of Bijapur, and the Sultan created a classic pincer movement to crush this young upstart. What happened?
So, in our journey so far, we have seen a young leader, barely out of his teens, taking bold risks. He introduced his own seal, captured Torna, built a massive capital Rajgarh, secured Kondhana fort, and made a strategic alliance for Purandar fort. But success, especially a disruptive success, invites scrutiny. In the corporate world, when a disruptor begins to take market share, the incumbents don't just sit back, they strike the foundation. And we rewind a little bit to July of 1648. Shivaji Maharaj faced his first Black Swan event. And this wasn't just a tactical setback on the battlefield, it was a potential systemic collapse. His father, Shahaji Raje, the practically I would say the source of Shivaji's strength and legitimacy, was arrested and thrown into the dungeons. Now just imagine the weight on an 18-year-old's shoulder. The company was under attack on three fronts. His father was a hostage in the south. His elder brother, Sambhaji, was under siege at Bangalore. And a massive Adil Shahi army under Fateh Khan was marching towards Pune. How do you lead when your world is collapsing? How do you negotiate when you have no apparent leverage? And today, staying strictly true to the historical records by Gajanan Mehendre, we deconstruct the greatest rescue mission in Maratha history.
So, you talked about the crushing defeat of Fateh Khan at Purandar. We spoke about in the last episode also. And I'm sure the danger had not gone away. So, what was the situation? What was happening?
So, Manisha, to understand this impending disaster and literally a masterclass in negotiations, we must first understand the betrayal. Mehndre's research reveals that Shahaji Raje wasn't just arrested because of Shivaji's rebellion. It was also the result of a deep seated top management friction within the Adil Shahi Sultanate. Shahaji Raje was on the southern conquest to capture what is called as the present day Tamil Nadu for the Sultan of Bijapur. The Sultan's army, along with General Shahaji Raje, they were at the siege of Jinji. And Jinji is somewhere about 150 kilometers southwest of Chennai. So you see, now Shahaji Raje had a great independent streak, a somewhat softer outlook towards the kings and rulers he defeated. And unlike the take no prisoner style of the Sultanate, and despite a battle victory, he would, let's say, reinstate the local ruler and making him and the people allies instead of permanent enemies. And this definitely was not liking to the then commander in chief, the Wazir Nawab Mustafa Khan. Now, Shahaji Raje was a general, a powerful general, respected and feared. In modern day parallel, he was something like a director who had grown too powerful. Nawab Mustafa Khan, the Wazir, the CEO, the CNC, was a strict loyalist who viewed Shahji's independent mindedness as a threat to his own position. And he was jealous of Shahji's cultural capital with the local Nayaks. And that's why Nawab was jealous of him.
So, Girish, in order to capture a general of Shivaji Raje's stature, it must have been a massive conspiracy. Who were these people? Were they his own people who were desperate for the downfall of Shahaji Raje and Shivaji?
You're right, absolutely right. I would say this is a classic case again of Ghar ka bhedi Lanka dhai. The arrest of Shahaji Raje on 25th of July 1648 was a meticulously planned boardroom trap. It required a coalition of rivals and internal defectors to neutralize a leader of his stature. And let me give the hit list, so to say, of those involved in the conspiracy at the siege of Jinji. The orchestrator, the chief orchestrator here, was Nawab Mustafa Khan. As the Adil Shahi Wazir, a Wazir is something like the Prime Minister, and the Commander in Chief also of the Karnataka expedition, he was the CEO of the arrest. Now, he viewed Shahaji Raje as a star performer who had become too independent and too powerful. And he used the cover of a formal war council, before the at launching the attack. So they had a war council. He called everybody for the war council, and used this cover to lure Shahaji, into a vulnerable position. Now he was a CEO, and who was the primary enforcer? A gentleman called Baji Ghorpade of Mudhol. So if Mustafa Khan was the brain, Baji Ghorpade was the brawn. Now there was a long-standing corporate rivalry between the Bhosles and the Ghorpades. Now Baji Ghorpade led the physical assault on Shahaji's tent. And it was the betrayal that Shivaji Maharaj eventually settled later at Mudhol. And we'll talk about it much later in another episode. The internal betrayers, there's one gentleman called Mambaji Bhosle. Now, in every corporate coup, there is often an internal defector. And one such was Mambaji Bhosle, who is a relative of Shahaji. He collaborated with the Adil Shahi forces. And his involvement provided the insider intelligence needed to ensure the trap was foolproof. And then you have a supporting board of Sardars. And these high-ranking officers provided the military muscle to surround Shahaji's camp and prevent any rescue attempt by Shahaji's loyal troops. So you had people like, there are people like Farad Khan, a senior general who supported the decree, Yaqut Khan, Azam Khan. They are high-ranking Bijapuri nobles. There was, from Maratha side themselves, you had Raghoji Mambaji and Vedaji Bhaskar. These are the tactical commanders who assisted in the logistics of the arrest. And then you had the execution squad. The junior commanders, which were part of the physical team that entered the camp to secure the hostage. The people like Balaji Haibat Rao, there was Sidhoji Pawar, there was Mambaji Pawar. Now, on that fateful day, according to Shiv Bharat, which is written by Kavi Paramananda, Shahaji Raje, trusting the corporate protocol, because he was a high-ranking general in the Adil army after all, he arrived at the war council with a small escort. But suddenly, he was surrounded by these people from his own army. And realizing the trap, And Shahaji, being Shahaji, a bloody battle ensued. He fought bravely, killed number of soldiers, but alas, he was outnumbered and was put in chains, shackled, and humiliated. He was taken to Bijapur to be tried as a traitor.
Uh, this was no lone act against a powerful general, right? So, what was this Pincer movement that you had earlier spoken about?
Yes, this was a synchronized hostile takeover. As Shahaji Raje was arrested, the Sultan had also dispatched another general, Farad Khan, to Bangalore to crush Sambhaji. Sambhaji is Shivaji's elder brother,
Elder
who
brother.
was used to stay with Shahaji in Bangalore. Another general, now this happened in 25th of July, 1648. In first week of August, he sent Fateh Khan to Pune to eliminate Shivaji. In the previous episode, if you had seen the previous episode number 4, we had seen how Fateh Khan was completely defeated and sent packing back to Bijapur in November 1648. Shahaji Raje was held as insurance to ensure the Bhosle startup surrendered all its assets. In modern terms, the Sultanate didn't just want the forts back which Shivaji had taken, they wanted to erase the founder's vision entirely.
So, anyone in Shivaji's shoes would have felt helpless and would have thought of giving up on his dreams. But I believe Shivaji had some different strategy. So, what was Shivaji's strategy?
Absolutely. Now imagine the scene in the boardroom at Rajgarh. Shivaji is just 18 years of age. He's born in February, now he's 18 years and 3 months, 4 months. Your father is in a dungeon 300 kilometers away at Bijapur. His mother, Jizabai, is his mentor and the emotional anchor. But the political situation is desperate. Now, most leaders in this situation would have definitely surrendered the forts immediately to save their father, and probably nobody would have objected or seen something anything else done. But Shivaji Maharaj had a board of advisors who thought differently.
Okay.
So he called for Sonopant Dabir, his foreign minister. Now, Sonopant was a veteran diplomat who understood the fine print of the 17th century powers. Sure, you must have asked Sonopant, if I surrender the forts, will they truly release Shahaji Raje? Sonopant's answer was chilling. Maharaj, in the Sultan's court, a surrender is not a deal. It is a confession. If you give up the forts, you give up your only reason for being kept alive.
Okay.
They will take the forts and then they will take your father's head. I would say this is a critical lesson for any CEO. Don't mistake a threat for a negotiation. And I think we are seeing it today a lot. If you give away your leverage too early, the negotiation ends and the liquidation begins. Timing is among the most underrated asset in any leadership crisis. We would rightly assume that Shivaji Maharaj would have reacted instantly to his father's arrest on 25th of July, 1648. He didn't. He waited 7 months before truly responding. Remember, he also had to first tackle General Fateh Khan, who was on his way to crush him. Look at the timelines.
That is at Purandar.
Yes, at Purandar. The timeline, 25th July, Shahaji is arrested in Jinji. Early August, first week August, General Fateh Khan is dispatched to crush Shivaji. He lands up in near Pune at Purandar, near Belsar. 15 November, Fateh Khan is defeated. That's almost 4 months have gone, now elapsed, and his father is still in jail. Now the Sultan forced Shahaji Raje to write a number of letters to Shivaji, commanding his son to surrender. And there is written evidence of all these letters. So the number of letters it would be written to Shivaji, but the Sultan of Bijapur received no surrender or mercy petition from Shivaji during this time. 4 months, Shivaji just kept quiet. This lack of correspondence was completely unexpected. The Sultan had assumed that the arrest of the father would result in the immediate hostile takeover of Shivaji's forts. Shivaji Maharaj chooses strategic silence. For 4 months, Shivaji ignores the Sultan's pressure, focusing solely on the battlefield. Mendre highlights that this was a calculated move. And Shivaji knew that if he sued for peace while the Adil Shahi army was on the offensive, he would be negotiating from a position of weakness. Shivaji focused entirely on the military front. He chose to fight and defeat Fateh Khan at the Battle of Purandar first. And by waiting for the military result, he ensured that when he eventually did open the negotiations, he would do so as a victorious commander rather than a begging son. In a crisis, the urge to communicate is a trap. If you speak while you are being attacked, you are pleading. If you speak after you have won, you are now dictating terms. Shivaji Maharaj's 4 month silence wasn't a lack of concern, it was a masterclass in strategic positioning. Shivaji Maharaj waited 7 months before he decided his next major move.
7 months in a crisis, doesn't it feel like a lifetime? Why wait so long?
So, as we have just seen, he had to first establish his military credibility. Somewhere in January or February 1649, that is about 6 to 7 months after Shahaji's arrest, about a month or two after, the exact date is not known, that is after a month or two that he had defeated Fateh Khan, he sent a letter to Prince Murad Baksh. Murad Baksh is the son of Mughal Emperor Jahangir. And Murad was the Subedar, or what is called as a Viceroy of Deccan. And he was situated at Aurangabad, that is today's Chhatrapati Sambhaji Nagar. Now, if he had returned to the Mughals immediately after the arrest, he would have appeared weak, a son begging for his father. Shivaji's first letter to the prince was a massive gamble. If that letter was intercepted by the Bijapuri spies before it reached the Mughal camp, Shahaji Raje would have definitely been executed for high treason immediately. Shivaji was walking on a knife's edge. By February 1649, that was the time when he initiated what is called as the Aurangabad-Pune messenger relay. By now, he wasn't just a rebel in trouble. He was a proven commander, offering a strategic partnership with the Mughals.
You mentioned Aurangabad-Pune messenger relay. Okay, now this is something new,
Right.
term that has come up.
Okay.
So, can you explain what is it? What is the Aurangabad-Pune messenger relay?
The Aurangabad-Pune messenger relay was literally a high velocity, high speed information relay that was established between the Subedar of Deccan and Shivaji Maharaj.
Okay.
And the first documented proof of this information velocity comes in the reply given from by Prince Murad Baksh to Shivaji, which is dated on March 14th, 1649. Now think about the logistics in 1649. Go back 300 years. For a letter to travel from Pune to the Subedar in Aurangabad, be processed by the Mughal bureaucracy, and they were a bureaucratic organization. So it's not that a letter arrived and directly goes to the prince. There had to be a bureaucracy which studies the letter, takes it up, etc. And for a reply to be drafted and sent back by March 14th. Now that is digital speed in a horseback era. Shivaji Maharaj literally maintained a chain of elite riders across this 250 kilometers of contested territory. Because you have the Mughals, you have the Bijapuri Sultanates to be crossed also. And this was contested territory. So he ensured his strategic pivot moved faster than the Adil Shahi ministers could react. By the time the Sultan and Bijapur heard about these negotiations, the Mughal response was already galloping back towards Rajghat. Now, he didn't just use a letter. He used the velocity of the information to create a sense of inevitability for the sultans. He didn't write as a son begging for his father's life. Instead, he wrote as a strategic asset. Imagine his Gamsham. Yeah. 18 years old, your father is arrested, and you write to the emperor, no, emperor's son, the viceroy of Deccan. He's a big post. He's a CEO of a big MNC, and so look, we can be strategic assets. That requires guts. It's a gamble, yes. Now, so what he offered to him was, look, why don't we collaborate? Which meant that Shahaji Raje, who is a great general himself, and me, I'm a proven commander, we join you, the Mughal forces, and we become your loyal servants. That was a masterstroke. And the news of this correspondence was selectively leaked to the Bijapur court. Suddenly, the Sultan wasn't dealing with a rebel son, he was dealing with a potential Mughal ally. The hostage, Shahaji Raje, had just become too hot to handle. What a masterstroke, guys. And here's the lesson for, I would say, the modern CEOs. Control the clock in your negotiations. Lesson 1, don't react, respond. How does one not react and respond? Just simple, take a few deep breaths before saying, what do I do now? Shivaji waited until his valuation was at its peak before opening the negotiations. Till then, he had maintained complete silence. Lesson number 2, outpace the competition. If your communication relay is slower than your rivals, your strategy, no matter how brilliant, will arrive too late to matter. In a crisis, the leader who communicates with the highest information velocity is the one who dictates the terms of the settlement.
Now, was Shivaji doing this negotiation single handedly, or was he in touch with his father?
Yeah, so they weren't acting in isolation, definitely, because there is recorded evidence of what was the discussions going on between the two. Shahaji Raje in jail, Shivaji from here. And through secret vakils and coded letters, the father and son were perfectly in sync. They were squeezing the Sultanate from both sides. And now the pincer closes. Inside the prison, Shahaji Raje plays the good cop. He tells the Sultan, you see, I have written so many letters to my son. He's out of control. He doesn't listen to me. He's a young upstart.
मेरी सुनता कहाँ
Mera
है?
Now, outside, Shivaji plays the bad cop. First, Shivaji kept completely silent for 4 months, okay, and then moved closer to the Mughals.
This is getting even more interesting.
Yes.
So then, did the Mughals take the bait?
On 14th of March 1649, Prince Murad sent a formal nishan. A nishan is a formal order from the prince. And that letter changed everything. Murad Baksh promised Shivaji a mansab of 5,000. A mansab means he would be in charge of 5,000 troops. And the Mughal corporate hierarchy, this was sort of a top tier executive position. You can say a C-suite position in the greatest empire on earth of its time. The real closing cause was this: rest assured, we are writing to the Adil Shah, your father will be freed, and you both must then present yourself at the imperial court. Shivaji had successfully outsourced his crisis management to a superpower. The Adil Shah now faced a choice: release Shahaji Raje and satisfy the Mughals, or keep him and face the imperial invasion. This, I would say, is the ultimate lesson in external leverage. When you are too small to fight the bully, bring in the principal. Now, suddenly, the Sultan isn't holding a rebel's father, he is holding the father of a Mughal general. The cost of keeping Shahaji in prison just exceeded the cost of a Mughal invasion. In the cost benefit analysis, he was now outmaneuvered completely.
That means now the Sultan would have no choice but to release Shahaji Raje, who would then join the Mughals.
Or so it would seem. कहानी में तो अभी ट्विस्ट और है. On 16th May 1649, the deadlock breaks. Shahaji is released. Obviously, the Sultan would have some face-saving clauses. But here, Sultan also is a master guy, master player. He too plays a master stroke to counter the Mughals. Instead of simply releasing Shahaji Raje, he reinstates him to his former post. And more or less saying sorry, but not exactly saying in so many words. Okay, so they negotiate and there has to be face saving, but negotiations are never free. The Adil Shah wouldn't let Shahaji go without having his pound of flesh. A compromise was reached in early 1649, and the terms were that Shivaji had to surrender back Kondana, which he had captured from the Adil Shahis. So he gave back the most strategic fort at that time in his position. Purandar, of course, was a strategic alliance, that didn't matter much. He also told Shambhaji had to give up Bangalore. Remember, I mentioned that Shahaji Raje's elder son was in Bangalore. Now, for a young leader, giving up Kondana was like I would say, a tech founder giving up 51% of your equity. Mm-hmm. It was the sentinel fort. But Shivaji understood: protect the source, not the resource. Kondana was a resource, a physical asset. Shahaji Raje was the source. The mentor and the coach of the foundation was Shahaji Raje. And that was the very reason why the Swarajya even existed. So forts can be rebuilt. Human life and vision cannot. Therefore, on 16th of May, 1649, Shahaji Raje was honorably released. Shivaji lost a fort, but he saved the dream. And yes, he had promised the Mughals that he and Shahaji Raje would come into their darbar and be the Mughals' loyal servants. What happened?
So apparently it was a very costly gamble by the Sultan, where he almost handed over Shahaji Raje and Shivaji to the Mughals at a huge cost to himself.
Yes, but the gamble also was from Shivaji Raje's part. He promised the Mughals that we'll come to you.
Okay.
And this is comes, I would say, as a shock to the Mughal Darbar. Now, once his father was safe, Shivaji Raje ghosted Prince Murad Baksh. He never shows up for his 5,000 mansab. He never signs the final merger. He used the leverage to achieve the purpose. And once the purpose was met, he walked away.
He ghosted the Mughals. That is amazing. Isn't this double dealing or double crossing the Mughals? That must have made them really furious.
Absolutely. But I call this, no, I call this Dharmic pragmatism. That's a new word that is coined. Dharmic pragmatism. Shivaji's mentors had taught him through the Gita, through the Ramayana, all these, I'm sure, that your purpose determines your path. He sacrificed a tactical promise to protect a sacred mission. And this is the most fascinating part of Mahendra's research. Once Shahaji Raje was released, Prince Murad Baksh was waiting for his new vice president, Shivaji, to show up. What did Shivaji do? He practiced strategic silence.
Again.
Again, he didn't go to the Mughal court. He didn't send any more letters. He stayed back in the Sahyadris. He simply ghosted him. Now, he used the Mughal leverage to achieve his specific limited objective, the release of his father. And once the deal was done, closed, he walked away from the merger. He never had the intention of becoming a Mughal puppet.
But then
He played two greatest powers of India against each other and came out with his father, his army, and his freedom intact. The lesson for you, apart from that, control the clock, build the coalition, and never sacrifice the foundation to save a resource. Shivaji Maharaj didn't just save his father, he taught us how to win a war without firing a single shot through the sheer power of information, velocity, and then strategic silence, and made two superpowers fight against each other.
But then why didn't Prince Murad Baksh retaliate against Shivaji Maharaj?
Yeah, that should have been the next logical next step.
Yeah.
Murad Baksh must have been very furious that this 18-year-old upstart is not showing up in my darbar. I've held him, absolutely. And by the time Murad Baksh realized that he had been ghosted, he was transferred from Deccan to Afghanistan.
Okay.
Was it luck? I don't know. And in November 1649, Murad Baksh left the Deccan, and thereafter, he went to Afghanistan, and then history takes a different turn because Shah Jahan at sometimes falls ill, and the princes now start fighting, and Aurangzeb comes to eventually kills Murad Baksh and becomes the emperor imprisons Jahangir, etc., because he had to consolidate his power. That's a different story altogether, and we'll see it in some other episode. But of course, the Mughals would not forget this episode. No way. However, Shivaji got that much needed breathing time for him to consolidate.
As we come to the concluding part of this episode, are there any lessons for the
Yes.
viewers,
Modern leader, yes.
modern leaders?
So there are,
Viewers?
I would say, four more lessons that I would like to finally come before we conclude. The first one is, I would say, is leverage the invisible stakeholder. Identify that third party that influences your opponent. Some example I can give you in today's context. Remember, a couple of years back, we had this Reliance and the Amazon Future Group battle. And the parties leveraged the Singapore International Arbitration Center. They used external powers to create leverage where actually none existed locally. Lesson number two, high value human capital versus fixed assets. Don't burn out your people to protect a project. When Tata Group acquired Jaguar Land Rover in the 2008 and the crisis hit, Ratan Tata sacrificed his short-term balance sheet health to save the human capital of JLR. Today, that talent is what drives Tata Motors towards global success. Lesson number three, negotiate for the what next, not the why. See, Shivaji Maharaj ignored the why of the arrest. He didn't sit cribbing, why was he arrested, what did he do, etc. He focused on a future where he was a Mughal ally, which he knew he would not take later on. So when a client is unhappy, don't just argue about the past mistakes. Propose a future partnership that makes the mistake irrelevant. Other fourth lesson that I might is the MVP of diplomacy. See, Shivaji didn't give the Mughals anything but a promise. Now that can be taken both ways, but there was no written, there was no nor a handshake nor a written document to say we are together. They were just promises which were being made through a letter. We can say that that is not correct and all that stuff, but your purpose has to be very high to afford to get away with. Purpose was the Swarajya. It was a very high purpose, and for that, these local things which had to be done, which seemed that Shivaji Maharaj was going back on his word, and people could take objection to that there is a problem. But a purpose, right from the Mahabharata times, if you study it, purpose is supreme. Let's take like Geo's entry. Geo leveraged the entry of people like Google and Facebook to bring in global capital and made it impossible for the local competitors to squeeze them out using regulatory hurdles. Google and Facebook were too big to ignore. So he brought them together as partners. Folks, by May 1649, the foundations of the Swarajya movement were secure. Shivaji Maharaj had gained a PhD in international diplomacy. He had learnt that the pen is often mightier than the sword, provided you know exactly how to use it and whose hand to force. The victory of 1648 and 49 moved Swarajya from just a rebellion to a regional power. As we close this episode, remember, a leader's mettle is truly tested when the enemy stops attacking your territory and starts attacking your heart.
Shivaji had to not just survive, he had to come out on top of these near devastating episodes. And that too at just the age of 18 years. So was he really alone, a lone ranger, or did he have a team?
Ah, yes. Any leader is only as good as his
His
or her team.
team. Right.
In our next episode, episode 6, we will pull back the curtain on the CEO's cabinet. We will take a look at Shivaji's exceptional A team, the people who provided him with strategic guidance throughout his journey as the CEO of Swarajya. And we will literally meet the specialists, the diplomats like Sonopan Tadabir, the intelligence master like Raghunath Korde, the financial architects like Balkrishna Hanumante, his military and battle gurus like Gomaji Naik, Baji Pasalkar, administrative gurus like Dadoji Kondev, and many other people like Kanoji Jede and others who played a very crucial role in the entire Swaraj Empire. The first name that generally comes up here is Jizabai. Look forward next time to discuss the A team for the CEO of Swarajya. I'm Commander Girish Konkar, and this is Manisha. Thank you, Manisha.
Thank you.
Jai Hind.
Jai Hind.